5. Remembering Uncle Grisha. I will try to be brief about him. Well, I'll do my best. He came along in my aunt's life unexpectedly in the north. I came to visit my aunt. Well, what the heck. In fact, I came to have something to eat at my aunt's apartment, and there he was. And my aunt was not home. So we met. Both stiff and silent, we watched some TV show. He offered some vodka. I turned down. I mean, I was a hell of a drinker myself, but not with the first comer. He spoke with a strong Ukrainian dialect. He looked well over 40. And, then was about 40 herself, and she still was pretty but divorced, so a permanent man was just a matter of time to her. Still better than occasionally seeing a handsome but married lover. I wasn't immediately, like my aunt was, fascinated by Uncle Grisha. I saw that he drank excessively, and with him, everything was revolving around drinking, including all his jokes. Well, you know, like a horny one would constantly talk about pussy. Later, with my wife's around, my aunt was picturesquely lamenting how come she had not seen before that he drank heavily, to which I replied that it was kinda hard not to see. I saw it the moment I saw him. Whenever drunk, Grisha would get incredibly animated. He would sprinkle with jokes, often same and unfunny. He was a former Soviet military officer. He was a retired captain or a senior lieutenant. His habits reminded me of Mr. Bayuk, the lieutenant colonel, an ethnic Belarusian, whom we all, the soldiers, adored. He, too, liked to talk about drinking, but more about women. He was a real damn Soviet officer, and it was him who in a smoking gazebo too brought us all back to reality a bit with our pre-army exaggerated love stories we all had. My aunt needed a man not only for her physiological and hormonal stability but also as a keeper, somebody to put her house together, and Grisha was good at that. At first anyway. He has built for her some good kitchen furniture. Not the best one, but sure it would do for the most part since she didn't have any at the time. They didn't sell any of it in the late USSR. The next was the small balcony he had for her. He even fell down once from it when he was busy glazing it. He was lucky going down from the 3rd floor. He only had some minor injuries. He said later that he still had a bottle of vodka left waiting for him. So he had really damn good motivation to survive. I saw that my aunt loved him. She was really fascinated with him. He was very charismatic and humorous to her, and still had some of his outer Ukrainian beauty left in spite of his constant both drinking and smoking. After dinner, he, overdriven by his good mood, would recite something like this. I reproduce roughly, from my memory, to be happy in the morning, too. It all was written at the beginning of the chapter on my very first one further down this book. I wish I had some vodka and my dick was up and running as a bunny's ear, and my aunt was burbled with laughter to this. It sounded funnier in his mixed Ukrainian-Russian dialect. But I was irritated instead. He had his peasant background. I mean, he was descendant of those paupers who had escaped dispossession in the 30s in Ukraine. His cultural demands were, well, he had none. Once he brought a tape with music and listened to it. It was the first time I saw him listening to music. It was Willy Tokarev singing, where his hero was coming over to his wife because she wouldn't let him drink and rummaged through his pockets all along. In a way, it was very Russian chanson music. A taxi driver would only listen. That song was bringing up some fucking vital issues, as Grisha said. Remembering Grisha, I would say that he loved to live, and never thought of any consequences. No, he wasn't the bravest person I had ever seen. Once his next-door woman came to Grisha for his help. Her husband, a Dagestani guy, had just sold a smuggled vodka to a bum and they started brawling over its price. She wanted Grisha to help her husband to knock that guy out, but Grisha wouldn't go out. I went out to look at the brawling and I saw that the neighbor could handle it on his own, and went back to Grisha to continue our interrupted boozing. We drank a lot, I must confess. If in a depression or something, he was always ready to help you. If you'd bring along a bottle of vodka that good that even doesn't smell with gasoline with you, you would be the most welcomed guest of his. he would lay a table with the best he had, to the frustration of my aunt3, and he had mean marinated mushrooms he was always proud of. Vodka was being sold in every kiosk in the 90s and Grisha was well known in the neighborhood. The seller would always give him a vodka on credit since he always paid back his debts on time. He fixed plumbings for a living when he came along. My aunt said, he was dressed up so bad that I thought, maybe, he was saving his money to buy a car. If a woman wants to find something good in a person, she would, even in the fact of being dressed badly. It never occurred to her though that a man was so poorly dressed because he never cared about anything except drinking. I never thought she was stupid, still. Then Gregory took to driving trucks again. Working on a gasoline tank truck, he would sell all gasoline on the side and drink away all the easy money falling on him with his friends and showing off all along about stealing the gasoline. He got fired. Well, he could have ended up in jail. He tried to get that job back but nobody would want to hire him back again. Everybody stole in Russia, especially nowadays, but doing it the way Grisha did, it was some sort of Italian-style robbery where the whole neighborhood would know what a robber was up to. He didn't stay long at the same work. The first serious fight I had with him was during the putsch in the late USSR. This one is almost completely forgotten ever here inside Russia, no wonder you have no clue about it. Well, in August 1991 there was an attempted coup against Gorbachev, which only lasted 3 days. Gregory, of course, supported the coup, and my brainless aunt too, by the way. And it was useless trying to prove something to Grisha, that the emergency committee, the newly established junta by the copist, was killing the future of this country. I remember his arguments: a man needs something to drink, eat, and get dressed to be happy. Note the 3 my aunt always complained about her Grisha, isn't he supposed to a Ukrainian guy, I mean a real Ukrainian? Who is not giving away his last shirt. For those who have no clue. There are Scotches we've got in Europe and here we have Ukrainians, we all telling jokes about them being good at running their properties but a bit tight-fisted. That wasn't the case with Grisha. Sequence. The drink was coming first to him. And he believed that the Soviet imbeciles, the dinosaurs, would provide all this for him. Incidentally, this is the vigorous Putin electorate today. The people like him were marginalized back then, that's why the putsch only lasted for 3 days. Just 2 years later he also supported the rebellion against Yeltsin and celebrated that too. I am sure that he would have supported enthusiastically the annexation of the Crimea, done by Putin, as well. The real core of our nation, damn it. Once he was brought to the hospital from work. They suspected a heart attack. I never saw my aunt that elated and happy before. She must have decided that her man would finally stop drinking and her life would just get better. And, after her Grisha's death, would tell us how she did not want to go home after her work. Her Grisha would either drink with his friends and the house would be full of cigarette smoke or he would already asleep drunk. What kind of life was that? Once my wife and daughter, my daughter was 3 years old, came to visit my aunt. Grisha home? Asked my wife. Not drunk yet? Asked her my daughter along. My aunt always remembered this episode with a laugh. Grisha too, laughed when was told that story, dear me, one of my wife's friend. I do not know what Gregory was doing there in the hospital, all I know he never gave up drinking. He got a new job. The government was building the biathlon track in Khanty-Mansisk. He was carrying the dirt on the truck to build the roads. But there was something wrong with him anyway. Again, he went to the hospital. He was sent to Tyumen this time. They went together with my aunt. She had a bad feeling. It was fully confirmed. Lung cancer. She was quietly told that he had not much time left to live, just a couple of months at best. Nothing would help, too late. Both my dad4 and Uncle Grisha, they lived their last days worthily. And both died in their bed with their loving wives around. Grisha finally gave up smoking and drinking. Just didn't feel like it anymore. Apparently, he wanted to live as lucid as he could his remaining days. He was planning to visit his parents. He got arranged a pension for him. Had no time to get his first pension pay though. I had a feeling that he expected to leave at least a year long. He was an unbridled optimist, not when he was drunk only. My aunt once blabbed that Grisha got really excited once over, "My dick is up, fuck, I am still alive." We are not that easy to go. Hell, no. Well, you can't postpone death by taking a deep breath. My aunt must have known more about his sickness. Once I brought her, sobbing her heart out, she never cried at Grisha's presence, held it good, to my wife's relative, a doctor. Aunt probably wanted him to help her out with some medications. She showed him some papers she had brought on Grisha's medical background to Uncle Victor, the doctor, who probably immediately realized that Uncle Grisha would live just a few days longer. For my pop had many notebooks in his portfolio with his manuscripts, which I'm still afraid to read. That's who I got my pump writing ability from. My mom, after reading them, wistfully said to me, "That's what he kept harboring all along. Why he wouldn't talk to me." To what I cruelly but honestly said, that we would have never listened to him, we would shrug him off irritatingly instead. By the way, he tried to talk to me, but our relationship must have been a total loss by then. Just a couple hours before his sudden death, Gregory was repairing my aunt's plumbing. He was good at that. Remember what he used to do for a living? He had borrowed some of the tools from that next door Dayastani guy. He died before my eyes. When I ran to my aunt's panicking phone call, she already had a resuscitation team desperately trying to bring Grisha back. His last words were when he flushed away his blood coming out of his throat with shower water, "Pizdits. I am fucked up." And then he lost consciousness and died in half an hour, never regaining his consciousness. Oh, Grisha, Grisha. I even wouldn't call you an ordinary sinner. Your life was a mess, but you have died with dignity. Very Ukrainian-Russian way to live and die. You turned out to have so many friends. Look how many you've got of them at your funeral. They couldn't be just some drinking buddies of yours. Know all of them anyway. I knew that everybody had known you in this town, but still. My aunt, being a Muslim woman, has arranged for him, the atheist, a proper funeral service in a Russian Orthodox church. When we carried to bury him in his coffin, he looked like his was sleeping his usual way with a slightly parted lips with his iron tooth gleaming, just the way he always slept drunk. Except he did not snore this time. At his 9 days, there were even more people at my aunt's apartment. That was a relative I had. I remember you, Gregory.